Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And a very good evening to you and warm welcome to Newsline Live. My guest this evening is Dr.Harini Amarasuriya from the JVP. Very good evening to you.
From the NPP.
From the NPP, of
Faraz.
which the JVP is a component member of.
You
What
are
is
correct.
That? Can you explain that a bit?
Faraz, I think I've explained it every time I've sat with
still
you
confused.
here. There's no confusion whatsoever. The NPP is a coalition of many organizations and parties, of which the JVP is the largest political party in our alliance.
When you go to elections, whichever they are, depending on if they're ever held, you'll be going as the NPP?
Of course, because we've contested since 2019 in the presidential election and in the general election
How's that
as the
acceptance
NPP.
going, by the way?
Very good. I think you would have noticed that there are many polls indicating that the NPP, if an election is held at this moment, would be definitely in the lead, whatever the election is. And we've been putting in a lot of work to get to that point. Over the last couple of years, we've really been working hard at the grassroots, building our communities, groups, putting together NPP community village structures, and that's been paying off.
And, you know, in this work at the grassroots, what is the main thing that the people are complaining of, asking you, discussing with you? What's the main topics?
The economic hardships are priority. Those are deeply felt, whether it's loss of livelihood, loss of income, inflation, difficulties with basic things like education and health. But interestingly, for us, a lot of people are desperately seeking a change in the political culture in this country. They're sick of the corruption. They're sick of the cronyism. They're sick of the arrogance of the political establishment, treating people like ignorant, ignorant, spineless beings that can be just simply manipulated with lies. And I think that's the biggest change that we've seen over the last couple of years, where there's been a real, in a way, a political consciousness that has come about among people who are no longer willing to accept the status quo for what it is, who are really questioning, who are seeking answers, and who are seeking a different kind of politics, a different kind of political culture, political practice. And that has always come up in the conversations that we are having.
But, you know, when we speak to people and so on, we're reminded that this past week, you know, I went a little bit out of Colombo, and a farmer reminded me that this Aragalea it wasn't the start. He reminded me that the farmers had started protesting way back when there were issues with the fertilizer and so on, and this overnight move towards organic agriculture. But also, they pointed out that under these new rules that are being proposed, they would not be able to do that. They're out there in these rural areas, and by protesting is how they can bring things to the notice, and so they rely on media to carry forward their message. Obviously, they're clearly dissatisfied with their local representatives, and all of this seems to indicate that there is a growing number of laws to suppress dissent, which of course constitutionally the people are allowed to do.
No, you're absolutely right, Faraz, but I think if you really look at history and what we can learn from history, after the kinds of people's movements that we witnessed and experienced in Sri Lanka, this kind of uprising, where people, irrespective of political division or political affiliation, and also irrespective of being led by a particular political movement, of their own volition and based on sort of a collective sense of outrage about the status quo and about politics as usual. There's a mass uprising, a movement, and as your farmer pointed out, it would be a real mistake to think that the Aragalaya was what we saw in Galle-Face, right? There's Aragalaya was everywhere.
Indeed.
It was something that was in people's hearts, in their minds, and in their support of the sort of the kind of dissent that was to be seen everywhere, in all kinds of places, right? So it is very normal and politically quite, that's what history has taught us, that after that kind of movement, if it doesn't end with the victory of people in that, in the kind of regime change that is desired, then the establishment will fight back. There will be a counter, right?
In the same week, in the east, on the East Coast,
yes,
somebody reminded me that they have been protesting for far longer,
yes,
because they say that, and now they can, they hoped and they understood that the people in the South as well understand their frustration.
Yeah.
Because they've been protesting for God knows how long.
No, absolutely. But I mean, that was what was unique about the last year, right? That it brought people together across the country in one sort of collective moment and collective critique that was directed towards the establishment. So what you're seeing now, these new laws, these the statements made by various people in power is the reaction, the response of the establishment fighting back. So what they are doing is perfectly on script, right? When there is this kind of uprising, the establishment and the status quo will fight back. However, I think that they are missing the entire point of what happened in the last year. This is not something that can be suppressed. This is not something, the Aragalaya is not over by a long shot, right? And everything that the government is doing right now, whether it's the new act, the Antiterrorism Act, or the pronouncements that they are making, the arrogance with which they are behaving, all of this is fueling that resentment and in a way confirming what the people have understood, that this status quo has to change. This political establishment has to change. This cannot go on. And it will change, and it will change. The Aragalaya is far from over, and it's not by suppressing events that they can, that this can be prevented. This is a growing movement, and we will see the change that people were expecting.
Okay, but this anti-terrorism bill contains some clauses that are patently far worse than some of the points in the PTA, which was draconian in any event.
Oh yeah, I mean if you think about this act, Faraz, it's an anti-terrorism act brought in at a moment when there is no conflict in the country. There are no armed groups in the country, right? There is no such scenario that is requiring this kind of an intervention, right? And the whole point of this bill was to do away with the demand was for the repeal of the PTA, right? Not to replace it with something that was worse. But if you remember, in 2015, in the so-called Yahapalana time, also Ranil Wickremesinghe attempted to bring this kind of bill. The Counter-Terrorism Act it was called. And that got thrown away because there was so much resistance to it, right, at that time. This is a worse version of that Counter-Terrorism Act, right, in no way justifiable, contravening so many clauses in our constitution. It's absolutely horrendous piece of legislation, and the only intent of it, as far as we can see, is to suppress dissent, to crush political opponents, and to silence criticism against the government. This has nothing to do with terrorism. This is absolutely nothing to do with the security of the people. This is a piece of legislation that is being brought in to protect the status quo, to crush dissent against the government. It's the most anti-democratic piece of legislation ever in this country, and that's saying a lot, because it's not as if we've not had this kind of effort in the past. But this is by far, I think, one of the lowest points that a ruling government has come to. If this is what they think is necessary at this point in time, remember, when they are also denying people the right to express themselves democratically through elections. So they are denying people that right to vote, and at the same time, they are denying or trying to deny people the right to express themselves or to critique their elected representatives in a moment of huge crisis in this country, when people are under so much pressure and undergoing so much pain. It's horrendous.
Do you think, or do you believe, that such moves by the ruling party and a lack of something or other results in, I'm looking at some estimates of general election voting intents. The NPP stroke JVP maintaining 41% of the intention and maintaining a lead over the SJB, which is just 30%. And both of these, of course, well ahead of the UMP, which is 6%. ITAC and SLPP 4% each, and SLFP and TMVP at 2%. Do you think that this is what's resulting? Or is it something else that you guys are doing, your party?
Something else that we are doing?
What are you doing to attract the voters? 41%. It's obviously unheard of before.
No, absolutely. So, in
it's
a way,
groundbreaking.
It's groundbreaking, because for the first time in 75 years of independence, I think the people of this country are being given a choice between electing a party that is part of the establishment and electing a party that stands with the people and that stands with the ideals, the visions and the values that people have been expressing over these last couple of years, that demand for change, that demand for system change. And I think that's what has drawn people to the NPP, because they see in us a difference. They see in us a challenge to that establishment, a challenge to that status quo, and that is exactly what people need. And you can, and the reaction that you see from the government right now is precisely the fear of that change. Fear of that change, the fear of the people getting power into their own hands democratically and being able to exercise that power.
But how much of, thank you for your questions, by the way, 0772 300 305, card coming up on your screen, straight through to here. But how much of commitment to this serious issue is being displayed by the opposition, by your party as well as the SJB? I'm referring specifically to reports that your leader, Mr. Dissanayake, was abroad. The leader of the SJB was said to be out of town, wherever. And so it appears to me that surely shouldn't all of you in the opposition, everybody in the opposition, should not be having time off. They should be on the ball, focused, with the eye on the ball.
I can't speak for the SJB, but certainly Mr. Dissanayake was not off having a holiday in Korea. He was working very hard. He's back in the country.
Well, getting the Korean voters.
Well, for the last 6-7 months or so, we have been, Honorable Dissanayake himself and some of the others in our party, we have been working quite closely with the Sri Lankan communities living and working abroad as well, because we recognize the fact that when we do form a government, we are going to need that support. We are going to have to, they are going to have to bring in investment. Some of them want to support the change that is happening here. And so as part of our strategy, we've also been working with the Sri Lankan diaspora, Sri Lankan communities in all of the countries. So it's part of that that Anura was in Korea recently. He was there for a very brief period, 3 days or something, and he's back in the country.
He's
this
back.
is
So his eyes are back on the ball?
His eyes were never off the ball.
When, I hope you accept
And also,
the
can I just add this?
Please.
We are also a party that is not reliant completely on an individual, right?
Okay.
We are very much a team. We know what each other is doing. We work collectively. We have a common vision. We each have our own roles and responsibilities.
But you'll only have one president.
We will only have one president.
It's not going to have a revolving door kind
No,
of
not at
president.
all. But when it comes to actually keeping the eye on the ball, we are all keeping
Okay.
our eyes on the ball
Okay.
collectively.
It's now time for a break, but when I come back, I'm going to take one of these questions that we've received. It's now time to take a peek at the headlines from this evening. We'll see you on the other side.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1. TV1, TV for life.
Nab the perpetrators of the bond scam before clamping down on university lecturers by declaring essential services. Professionals Trade Unions Collective responds to the president. Prednisolone eye drops imported from India cause for infection. Usage suspended with immediate effect. Another gazette issued to control the price of eggs. Party leaders meet and decide to debate on IMF agreement. US ambassador says legislation for combating terrorism should not restrict freedom of expression. Sri Lankans march in Katuapitiya, demanding justice for the victims of the Easter attacks.
ගමට සතුට ගෙන එන ගම්මැද්ද රට නගන ජනපෞර
TV1, TV for life. News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Dr. Harini Amarasuriya from the NPP. Dr. Amarasuriya, it's easy to say it now that you are in the opposition about this dissent and so on. What would you do if you were in power? How would you handle this?
Well, we are a party that has, all of us who are in the NPP have been at the receiving end of what it means to be denied democratic rights. So I think there's a huge lesson for us to be learned there. And I mean, our whole intent, our whole reason for coming together as the NPP for our political mission is to restore that the democratic rights and privileges in this country. We are very much a people-led movement. We are here, our political vision involves democratizing the country, whether it's politically or economically or culturally, right? And that means bringing power back to the people, and that's what we will be doing. I don't think you can do that in fear of the people. You have to trust in people, you have to believe in people, and you have to believe that people know and understand what's good for them, and that people can be mobilized collectively for the better good, for the common good, for a higher ideal. That's what drives us. Our belief in the in people and the goodness in people. We are not in this mission. We are not in this game because we think that people are there to be manipulated or that people are inherently evil. We see the good in people, and we see what hope and goodwill and solidarity, what it can do and the kind of changes it can bring about. That's what drives us. That's what motivates us.
What do you say to the argument that the government is being proactive? They recognize that there will be a lot of caliber dissent due to principally due to the economic conditions now prevalent in the country, and that they are taking steps to ensure that the country will run as smoothly as possible, which is why, according to some arguments and schools of thought, that the president has taken various steps to ensure that various matters are essential services.
That's rubbish, because that's a kind of a view that sees the economy and the political system as disconnected. It's not. How the economy doesn't function independently. The economy functions as part of the political system in a country, and the choices that we make in economics are political choices about who we privilege, who we value, who we see as beneficiaries of the economic decisions we make, right? So, the idea that the government keeps trotting out that this is required in order to fix the economy is absolute rubbish. This is because this is a government without a mandate. This is a government that's inflicting pain on people, and this is a government that's out to take revenge on the public for what happened in the past 1.5 years, where the establishment was shaken by its very foundation. Right? That is what you're seeing right now. This is a government fighting for its survival. This is a political establishment of which this government and Ranil Wickremesinghe in particular are the representatives, are the guardians. This is the traditional political elite fighting for its survival. This is what you're saying. This has nothing to do with economic or political stability. This has nothing to do with the common good of the people of this country.
Dr. Harini, your party at one time or another called the leader of SJB busman. Is it only politics?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we had a critique of what was being done. I think I don't know who called him busman. I don't agree with calling anybody any of those things. Most of us don't, right? We don't think the education problem can be resolved by distributing buses.
Okay, but
we have a policy disagreement. We don't have a vendetta against the person.
Right, but what would you really like to see? How far or how disconnected is the choice of having a united opposition to fight this greater evil?
See, that's a difficult one for us because many of the other, there are sections within the opposition, I mean, and this is not about individuals, this is about political differences. This is not about whether I like or whether we like X, Y, Z. That's nothing to do with it, right? But politically, we are on two very different platforms. The SJB, for example, don't have a fundamental disagreement with the policies of this government or with the policies of Ranil Wickremesinghe, right? Their claim is that they could do it better, that they would be more efficient in delivering on on the kinds of policy changes that Ranil Wickremesinghe and his government are planning to.
But your party is saying the same thing.
No, we're not.
You're saying that you can do things better and that the people will recognize that, which is why you are more popular.
But we are also offering a different policy, different policy choices, right? We're not saying that we are going to go down the same path, right? Our vision for this country is essentially different.
Does that include, what steps, concrete steps, would you take, your party take, towards establishing Sri Lanka as an export-orientated economy?
Lanka, first of all, to identify the areas that we need to invest in, right? I mean, and in this country, I think one of the things that we have to do is we can't ignore the agriculture sector where a majority of our people are engaged in, right? We need to make the agriculture sector profitable, and an agriculture sector that enables people to not just exist through lack of choice, but actually as something that will support their lives and bring them some kind of satisfaction, right? So investment into turning the agriculture sector into something that is profitable for the farmer, fair for the consumer, that would be one area. But also to identify other areas where we can actually link and capture some part of the global market that will generate incomes for us. And there are certainly so many areas that we see where that is possible, whether it's in the IT sector, tourism, fishing, right? There are so many sectors, shipping, right? It's completely underutilized. We are really not performing to our potential.
Apparently, there's over 2 million of our fellow citizens who work abroad.
Yes.
And at least half of them remit money back to Sri Lanka. When you are, not if, but when you are in power,
yes,
do you have any plans to make the franchise available to expatriate Sri Lankans?
This is something that we've been working on for a long time. This is a demand. Actually, our former parliamentarian and former chairman of COPE, Sunil Handunhetty, leads our international relations unit, especially with Sri Lankans working in other countries. And this is something that we have in our policy proposal to give the franchise to Sri Lankans working abroad.
Does your party have any sort of undertakings, wide as they may be, from the expatriate Sri Lankan community that we will fund you? Because obviously you need funding to contest this election. Things are very expensive. Do you have guarantees?
No, it's now not so transactional, right?
Okay.
But we see the Sri Lankan community abroad as also an influential group. It's one of the groups that we would work with, right? And we see them as a potential source of investment for this country. It's also a huge talent pool out there. There are many Sri Lankans living abroad who would be willing to invest, who would return to this country and provide their expertise, all of this. And we think under our government, we need all of that in order to get this get our country back on its feet again. Because it's not going to be an easy situation. We'll be inheriting a country that has been decimated over the last 75 years. So we're going to need all the help that we can.
All the way from Malaysia. Could you ask the lady, with all the chatter and discussion on the way the present government is functioning, what would she and her party do that is different to be more progressive economically, politically, and acceptable to the sovereign people of Sri Lanka? You have 1 minute.
Deal with the corruption, put in places transparent systems of accountability and procedures, right? A clean government, and a government that is willing, representatives who are willing to make the sacrifices necessary to get this country out of the mess that it's in.
And the NPP is ready, willing, and able to do that.
Absolutely.
Harini Amarasuriya, thank you very much for being on Newsline Live.
Thank you, Faraz.
Thank you. It's now time for the primetime news from News First. Take care, have a great evening as much as you can, and as always, God bless you all.